Right. Good afternoon, everybody. My chapter in the Old Ways, New Roads Travels in Scotland has to do with the part played by landowners in the development of the Highland road system towards the end of the 18th century and the beginning of the 19th century, building on what was an initial infrastructure of roads that had been provided by the military roads. Away from these military roads, travel had always been hampered by the poor state of the roads, by lack of bridges, dangerous fords, and the like, which meant that you could easily get cut off in the Highlands. Whereas, of course, a better transport system helped to encourage things like agricultural improvement and an increase in trade, as well as opening the way for tourists, which have been described elsewhere in the book, and particularly, for example, by Nigel Least last week, earlier speakers in the series. So as a garden historian, I was particularly interested in the impact of the new roads on the Highland estates and the wish of landowners, on the one hand, to increase the value of their estates through investment in the new roads and bridges, but at the same time distancing themselves from the increasing amount of traffic by expanding the designed landscapes which provided the settings for their houses. So this led me to examine archival material, original archival material relating to 4 of the great designed landscapes, historic designed landscapes, which tourists were able to visit in the course of what has come to be known and has already been described earlier in the series as the Petit Tour. And that involved either clockwise or anti-clockwise the tourists visiting Inverary Castle, which you see in the picture here, and Loch Fyne, Taymouth Castle, Strath-Tay, Blair Castle, Glengarry, and Dunkeld House. I only have a short time today, so in today's talk, I should like to describe what I'll do is to try and describe the variety of sources which I was able to access and to use to build up and tell my story. And in doing so, I'll focus in particular on Taymouth Castle and Dunkeld. So I think you may have seen this image before or seen it in the book, famous image here of painting by 2 artists, James Norrie and Jan Griffier, from the 1730s. And what you see there is Taymouth Castle to the right-hand side of the picture. And away in the top left of the picture, the upper picture, you see the hamlet of Kenmore and the point at which the Loch Tay turns into the River Tay. And at this time, the public road, which obviously roads being an important part of the subject which we're talking about, used to lead through the park, or what in Scotland we call the policies of the castle to the ferry at Kenmore. I think I can use an indicator. So the ferry, and I'm afraid the painting is not detailed enough here, but there is actually a ferry just setting off from the Kenmore side of the river to cross and take the road to Killin. And then below that and to the right, a lovely watercolor painting by Hugh William Williams, which is in the collections at Perth Museum and Art Gallery, and it shows the bridge, which, as we shall see, was built in the 1770s and really transformed the landscape in a number of ways. But a lot of what I was interested in were the documents. Unfortunately, Inverary, Taymouth, Blair Castle, and Dunkeld are all very well documented. There's a huge collection of material from Taymouth in the National Records of Scotland. Blair Castle has a lot of material on in its own archives, a private archive held at Blair Athol, and likewise Inverary has its own big collection. So these are very well documented landscapes. These are the sort of documents then which you can use to build up a story. And on screen at the moment, I've put 4 documents. Upper left of the picture is perhaps the start of the process of improving the roads and the bridging of the River Tay. And this is a document dated 1771 with the signature of the Earl of Breadalbane, whose base is Taymouth Castle. And here he's putting down £500, the sum of £500, and getting his wealthier neighbours also to contribute their bit as well. So this is, if you like, the original document which they're signing, pledging money towards the building of the bridge at Kenmore. And it says in the quotation at the top, it says, they are sensible of the utility and service a bridge across the Tay at Kenmore will be to the county in general and to the adjacent countries in particular. They then go ahead and they secure an estimate. So the document, one of the documents on the bottom right there to the left-hand side is the estimate which they get for the building of the bridge. And that is provided by a couple of stonemasons, Patrick McInnes and Lodovick Pickard, who are then on the right-hand side, the other smaller document, sign their contract of employment. And then at the back, behind those, another fascinating document, because not only were the landowners and other people subscribing, but also ordinary tenants. And so you have lots of lists of all the tenants providing small sums of money. And the document at the back there is actually a subscription from the tacksmen and tenants of the annexed estate of Strowan in Rannoch. Sensible, as it says on the document, how useful a bridge would be to us and the said estate. And you have all sorts of people just signing, perhaps in some cases, people who are not literate, signing with a cross or whatever, and others signing with their names. And then you can trace through the documents the process of building the bridge. So up here on the right-hand side of the picture, an account which shows you the process, if you like, of the bridge gradually being built and the payments being made to Mr. Pickard and McInnes for their works there. And obviously during the building of the bridge, there was a decision maybe to put in a couple of extra arches. So over and above what was originally estimated, you have a figure for additional arches, perhaps for flood relief. And then on the bridge itself, there is a stone plaque which records the fact that monies were given by the government towards the building of the bridge. so there's government subsidies. And I know it's difficult to read here, but it says this building erected AD 1774, His Majesty gave in aid to it out of the annexed estates, £1,000 sterling. Viator tuto transeas sis memor regii beneficii, I'll translate that for you because it appears on a number of bridges built at around this time elsewhere, and it says, "Traveller, may you cross safely, but be mindful of the royal benefaction." Now, what the bridge did was to replace the ferry. We have one or two nice pictures here on the left. Above, the ferry at Kenmore, as depicted on Thomas Winter's plan of 1754, showing the ferry here at Kenmore, and the scatter of a few rather disorganized houses. And more or less of the same date, a lovely picture, or a detail from a huge picture, in fact, by the artist John Sanger, from thought to be about 1756, showing the ferry running across Kenmore here. The document on the right is fascinating because this is a memorial, as it's referred to on the document, by a fisherman, Donald Nichol, who was evidently running the ferries before the bridge was built. And in 1775, the year after the bridge has opened, here he is trying to get compensation for the loss of his ferry boats. One smaller one was sold, another one was commandeered by the bridge builders and wrecked, and the third was washed out down the River Tay by a flood. And so here he is. So it gives a really vivid picture of the social impacts of what was going on here. What I don't know is whether Donald Nichol, our fisher at Kenmore, ever got paid for the loss of his boats. And again, there were other social impacts on so the diversion of the road round the park in order that the Earl could benefit from a bit more privacy once the traffic increased, involved building a new road up onto what they call the Braes of Taymouth, which were higher up above the park, and the closure of the public road through the park. Not everybody was happy with that. And again, there's a whole bundle of documents in the National Records of Scotland from a court case which was raised, I mean, this went on for many years after the road was diverted, but a court case against the Earl of Breadalbane arising from the diversion of the public road. So you have a petition and as I say, court action led by Captain Robertson of Edradinet and Sir Neil Minges of Castle Minges, both nearby landowners who were trying to get the road reinstated in its original route. So here are documents, some of the court documents. This went to court, indeed, and the evidence provided a map, and I don't know if you can see there's a difference between the roads here shown in red, which was the original road running through the park, and the diverted road which ran higher up on the hillside. So a picture of the new road and the bridge on the new road higher up overlooking Kenmore in the distance. In the event, that particular court case was settled in favour of the Earl. and he was able to finally get rid of the traffic going through his grounds. But plenty to read there. Fascinating little story, side story. And another couple of fascinating documents, and these sort of rather scrappy of documents, but they're full of interest, I think. Here is a detail from the plan of the Taymouth policies drawn by Surveyor George Langlands down on the left-hand side, showing the bridge now in place, and also a much more organized looking arrangement of houses made into a street and the like. And the document on the top right, I think, is really fascinating. This very scruffy little piece of paper stating that, and this is obviously the Earl's has said, as it is found absolutely necessary in consequence of the improvements and plantations making and to be made at the east end of Loch Tay, it's important that the village of Kenmore be redd up, that's tidied up, and made what was originally intended for an ornamental village. It is Lord Breadalbane's orders that the tenants of houses in the said village do remove all byres, outhouses, etc. to their lots, their victuals and hay to be stacked there, and a barn to be erected at the same place for the general use of the village. So here is one of the consequences, if you like, of the building of the bridge is the creation of the, and I'm sure many of you will have visited Kenmore, lovely, rather picturesque village. And work was begun in 1773 at the same time as the bridge was being built on building of a new inn for travellers, now the Kenmore Hotel or Breadalbane Arms. Among the folk who stayed there was Robert Burns in 1787 in the course of his tour of the Highlands, or for example in 1801 by Joseph Farrington, friend of Turner's, who described it as an excellent house with good accommodation and great civility. And Kenmore went on to impress people like Dorothy Wordsworth with, as she says, its neat church and cleanly houses, or cleanly houses. Although Dr. John McCulloch, writing a little bit later in 1824, was rather less complimentary. There is charm at first sight and an air of importance at the same time about this little village, but which cannot fail to be soon dissipated, he says. Sorry, I meant to refer also to the document on the bottom right there. It's another estate memorandum, in this case in the Earl of Breadalbane's own hand, dated 1797, which tells us something about the pressure on the Taymouth estate from the ever-increasing number of tourists following the Petit Tour by the end of the century. And it states that, as I find the terraces and walks in the pleasure ground have been very much hurt of late by the number of people who walk on them, I require all the keys to be delivered up. And if anyone is found walking on them without my orders or permission, they will be prosecuted as the law directs. Now, the other bit that I should like to focus on is the area around Dunkeld and the bridging of the Tay at Dunkeld, which still, although it had been bridged at Perth and at Aberfeldy and then at Kenmore, there was no bridge at Dunkeld. And so, again, one could find in the Athol archives or elsewhere a story of in this case, a document on the right. I suppose just to explain the map here, this is before the bridging, shows the James Stobie's map. You have the house, Dunkeld House, Duke's house in Dunkeld. You have a military road coming from Couprangus, which then runs through from the east to west. And then you have the Great North Road from Perth to Inverness, coming up from the south, past East Boat, which you see down in the bottom right-hand corner here, and the main ferry, which was actually at the village of Inver, where it crossed over and went on up the military road on the east side of the river. Apologies for moving on before I meant to. And then on the right, we have an interesting document. This is an appeal to the Lords Commissioners of His Majesty's Treasury, pointing to, and then again a quotation, the many advantages which would arise to the northern parts of Scotland and to the county in particular from a bridge being thrown over the large and rapid river Tay at Dunkeld, at present only to be crossed in boats, a mode of passage which on the sudden falling of rain or melting of snow is often dangerous and sometimes fatal. So as I say, no bridge between Smetten's Bridge in Perth or Wade Bridge in Aberfeldy. And one of the other documents, and talking about the building of the bridge here, comes with the arrival of Thomas Telford, who's in charge of the becomes in charge of the Highland roads, comes to be nicknamed the Colossus of Roads. And there's this rather charming letter from Telford in the Athol archives at Blair Castle. So Telford comments on the improvements in the road from Dunkeld to Blair Athol, which he declared to be much improved and in an excellent state, with the new bridges up at Blair Athol, masterly performances of their sort and suitable to the place. And then he says how he perambulated the magnificent scenery of Dunkeld, not forgetting the bridge, which you see is he's underlined and written so particularly, and the underlining in his letter, assuming, or I think we can assume from that, he sees this as one of his masterpieces, as well as he might do so, given that it stood for unaltered for more than 200 years. But really nice to see something like this that one can connect with the people. And again, quite a dramatic change in Dunkeld as a result of the building of Telford's Bridge, which was to the east of Dunkeld House here. And before that, you had the road coming in from the east, running through the grounds of Dunkeld House and up the east bank of the Tay, or coming up from the south, going through the village of Inver, across the ferry, and again joining the military road up. But one of the things which happened once Telford's Bridge had been opened in 1809, that it actually changed the whole orientation of Dunkeld by making it north-south rather than east-west. And now, when you take the road north, and this is a plan before the bridge was built, 1802, we're obviously looking at what benefits would come from the bridge. And one of those was that it meant that the north-south arrangement of Dunkeld, which you travel through now, is the main street going up Athol Street, enables you to loop right round the north side of the park and the policies at Dunkeld House, thereby allowing the Duke to close up the roads which used to run through his pleasure grounds. In the bottom left-hand side, a picture, a lovely watercolor of the building of Dunkeld Bridge, which you see here under construction, with the town in the distance, and Craigbinion and the hills beyond. But on the ground, on the left-hand side of the picture, where you see the stonemasons at work, there was to be, or at least one of the things, was the plan for a new village, or a new town indeed, of Dunkeld. As at other places, the idea was that this could lead to further development. And here in the Blair Athol archives are two of three plans which were drawn at the time. And you see this is Telford's Bridge coming from the north, and the idea was to develop the new town of Dunkeld. Although by 1823, none of that had come about, in fact. And here is a plan of Dunkeld drawn by John Wood in 1823, which just shows still fields and so on the south side of the bridge. So nothing ever came of these plans to develop the new town of Dunkeld. So I think I've used up my allotted time, and I will simply finish by saying there are similar stories which I could tell about the building of Smitten Bridge in Perth, which involved or also the removal of the village of Scone from near Scone Palace, plans to divert the road from Blairgowrie to Perth further to the east, or, for example, the diversion of roads, the moving of the town of Fochabers in Moray in 1776, and the building of the Spey Bridge by Thomas Telford again in 1806. I finish, as I started, with a picture of Inverary, which has its own equally interesting and well-recorded story to tell of the building of new bridges over the Shira and the Arry rivers, and of the creation of the new town of Inverary between 1753 and 1776, and which is shown here in all its magnificence, distant from the castle. So I think I'll finish there, but I hope in that talk today, I hope to have been able to convey something of the fun which I have had in gathering this evidence from a wide range of sources to tell the story of old ways and new roads on the Highland Circuit.